Hello, welcome to your daily dose of salt and light with myself, Nadine Ness. We have a lot to cover today, as usual, but I have a lot of tabs today. Hopefully, we'll be able to get through them somewhat fast. It is Friday. It's so funny because last Friday, I was telling you guys about a song that I often will send my husband. I think it's called It's Friday. It's such a cheesy song. But after the episode, I went and did a deep dive on the artist. I can't even remember. Rebecca Black, is that her name? I think it is. Anyways, she's like this like big time artist now that actually does decent music. So, yeah, we're going to cover Alberta alienation sentiment and what I think is driving Danielle Smith to the strong stance she's taking. I want to get into it right away, but for the people who watch this on the replay, if you're watching this, it may not be live. I think a lot of people who catch it, like even on the replay, think it's live because when I say things like, oh, if somebody comments the sound's not working, I ask, is it working? And then everyone comments. But on the replay, I have people commenting like a day or two later, the sound is working. So that's how I know they think it's live. So it might not be live. But yeah, the the polls are showing that Carney might be getting in the direction of winning a majority government. Western separatism and alienation is rising, and it's much higher than I thought. When I did the episode yesterday, I didn't have the details for it. However, there's details coming out. Rachel Parker, I don't know if you know her. She used to be with True North, the news that then became Juno News. But she's not with True North anymore. She's kind of gone on her own. Anyway, she hired Main Street. Here, I might as well bring it up here. Here. I'm just realizing I'm not really zoned in properly on the camera. I just got to adjust. She hired Main Street Research. I think that's what it is here. Yeah, Main Street Research. It's a polling company in Canada. She got them to do a poll, and the number proves what she sensed for some time. Support for Alberta independence has never been higher. We also have data on the growing Alberta statehood movement, results dropping on my YouTube shortly. So she posted this yesterday while I was filming at 1, so that's why I didn't see it. And then she says exclusive, almost 40% of Alberta support, almost 40% of Albertans support or somewhat support Alberta independence, doubling support for the statehood movement at 20%. The full breakdown is available below. So she did do a video, so I'm going to play some of it with you guys. And if you don't follow her already, I'll just put this quickly here. Go follow her. She's on Twitter, she's on YouTube. Her YouTube account is, I think if you just search Rachel Parker, it should come up. But anyways, I'll make this bigger. I kind of skipped to a few of the things that I saw that she had for data. Oh, also, let me know where you're watching from. Hi, everyone. I'll say a bit of highs to a few of the comments. David is here as usual. Hi, Roger Scott on Facebook. Sheila Willem. Sheila, do I know you? Because the last name sounds familiar. Are you related to Sheldon? And Velda from Alberta, Michelle from Saskatchewan. Hi, quite a few people on Facebook today. Only David so far on YouTube. I wonder if YouTube is giving the notifications or not. I know Facebook still are. If you haven't set your notification to be notified of the episodes when I'm live, you can do so. You just go to like my profile, whatever place it is, and you can click. It's like a little bell, I think, on YouTube. I might show you guys later on how to do that. But anyways, might as well share this with you guys. So this is she's got a few. So this one's at 7:59. Let's see what else. this is one of the graphs. If you support Alberta, here, let's see what she says. Let's play it.
Last year and a half just due to poor policies from the federal Liberals, which, as I said, have a real shot at forming government. So I asked this question to you. What do you think will happen if we see another federal Liberal government elected at the end of next month? And at the same time, we see a coordinated effort telling Albertans about the benefits of independence. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. I want to keep.
So this is if you support Alberta independence or Alberta separating. 26% strongly support, 11% somewhat support, 8% neither support or oppose. So these are the undecided. 4% somewhat oppose, 44% strongly oppose, and 7% don't know. So if you were and somebody posted in one of the comments as well, and this is Alberta. I asked her if they did Saskatchewan and they didn't. They didn't do Saskatchewan. I would like to do a poll for Saskatchewan, but they want $1,500 or somewhere around that cost. So, and I don't have that money. But if you would like to see one for Saskatchewan and you would like to put support towards that, you can we would be able to do it through our organization to just to get a gauge of the general public. So the organization that I am founder and president of, Unified Grassroots, would be willing to do it if we got the support, the financial support to do it. To support that, you would go to www.unifiedgrassroots.com and then click donate. And you can even say, I think if it's towards that, you can send an email that you're pledging or whatever. So if that's something you'd like to see done in Saskatchewan and you'd like to support the efforts towards that, you can do it on our website, unifiedgrassroots.com. And yeah, and send a donations there. My husband won't let us take it out of our personal finances. Things are tight, like a lot of people. But yeah, so that was one of the graphs. This was another one that was really interesting. So the same question that was asked, it's by demographic. So it seems 65 plus are really against it. And I think that's probably because of the healthcare concerns. Although I was talking to one of our board member, Kevin, today about that. And he says we have the leading cause of death in Canada, not the leading cause, the second leading cause of death is it's one of the top 5 anyways. I think it was the second, he said, was not having access to healthcare. Tara Lee's watching from Ontario. Roger Scott's wife. I think Roger's also watching. No, I didn't. I've got it on my list. I also want to watch the interview that Clyde Do Something did. Roger Scott asked me if I watched Canada Illusion yet, and I didn't. Okay, let's get through this data. But 65 plus, I think that's more healthcare concerns, especially if they're talking about Canada joining the US versus just becoming its own country. So obviously people who utilize the healthcare system would be a bit more concerned. So they were at 18% for strongly support. That's still much higher than the polls that we've recently seen. So which I find I was a bit surprised, but to seeing this. 31% was the highest in 50 to 65 years old, strongly support. 35 to 49-year-old was 28% strongly support, and 18 to 34 was 23.3%. Now, men tend to support it a lot more than females. So strongly oppose was 50% female, strongly oppose was 37.7%, strongly support was 32.6%, strongly support in men, And then female was 19.3%. So they from what I can see here, they asked 1,228 people. So there's quite a few people that didn't answer, because if you look at the questions, the people that answered, 601 people answered in males and 571 answered in females. So if you add that up, it doesn't add up to 1228. So a bunch of people didn't answer. Interesting. It says 56 people. And then the other really interesting thing is where the strongly support versus less came from. So in Calgary City, 24.1% strongly supported, so like statehood or separation, and 7.4% somewhat supported. But then in Edmonton was even less, because it's all government people. 20.5% and 10.9%, but still, even Edmonton was still at 31%. Edmonton, the city of Edmonton. And then if you add up the strongly support, somewhat support for the rest of Alberta, that was 30.2% and 14%. So that's 46.2% in rural communities. And this is before we see the next results for the general election. I would really like to see what we would see for results in Saskatchewan. Melinda says, it may not be only healthcare. What about capital gains tax on all our investments in RRSP? How would that work? I'm going to try to find out. Not too many can afford payouts of that kind of tax. If you are younger, you could rebuild. Older, it may not be as easy, if not possible. Well, see, that's all things that would be considered. And I think some of the people that are not sure or whatever, maybe it's because they don't see what it would look like. I would love to see a breakdown of what it would look like if it was to occur. Like a full breakdown of what it could look like for policy wise, what it could look like for different sectors of the country, what it would look like if Alberta was to allow itself to fully thrive when it comes to natural resources. What could that do for our healthcare? Squirrel Nut says boo, as in boo, or boo as in like trying to scare us. Kim is watching from Mitchell, Manitoba. Hi, Kim. Maria, you're here. You weren't here yesterday. Alvi is also here. No, I haven't. See, a lot of people send me stuff and I don't get time to watch everything. If I took the time to watch everything, I would never get work done and I would never spend time with my family. So I don't usually watch things in the evening. The only time I'll watch stuff, and I don't really watch, I just listen to stuff, is when I'm driving. I'll put like videos when I'm driving. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see. There's been some conversations too. What if if it was to be like join a part of the US, what if they were to offer 100,000 to every resident? Like, I don't know what that would look like, but that's another thing, right? If there's incentives kind of brought in with it, it could potentially change things a lot. But yeah, this kind of shows that Alberta is really not happy with Ottawa. If anything, even if it never leads to separation, I think it shows there's a lot of Albertans that are really not happy with Ottawa, and probably even less so with Mark Carney, because most Albertans know kind of what Mark Carney stands for. It means the end, the race to net zero, the end of natural resources. He said over and over he wants oil and gas to stay in the ground. Like he's pushed like the whole climate change agenda, all of that. He's pushed it to the extreme. So Albertans kind of know. Maria says, in my opinion, I don't believe people realize the threat China is to Canada, and I'm not talking tariffs. No, I agree. He, Sam Cooper, that came on my show. I'm going to see if I can get him on my show again. Talked about that, but he's been talking about it a lot more since. Let's see. I'm just going to see if there was any more. Let's see what this one says.
Movement is already a lost cause. Moving on to the next question here, and it is one of the Alberta statehood movement. Main Street Research asked respondents, some Albertans have talked recently about joining the United States as the 51st state. Would you support or oppose joining the US as the 51st state? Now, the vote largely went to the no category here. 67% of Albertans strongly oppose US statehood, 3% somewhat oppose, and almost 20% were interested in the idea. 11% said they strongly support the idea, while 9% said they somewhat support the idea. Another 3% said they don't know, and 7% said they neither support or oppose. So essentially, we are looking at 70% who.
Interesting. So I want to make a point too. Someone said it in the comments of one. I'm going to see if maybe, because it was a really interesting comment from the post where she had shared. Here, I'll just go back on her profile. It was one of the first. I can't find it. But basically it said, these are the results of a poll when there's been no coordinated campaign or efforts to educate Albertans as to what statehood or just separation would look like. There's been no organization or organized efforts, not for the last few years. I think when Trudeau got in, yes, there was, but it's kind of gone meh. So these are the results right now with no coordinated efforts to educate and campaign as to what that would look like. So imagine if there is education and campaign that starts educating Albertans as to what that would look like, that where it takes away all those insecurities or those unsure, kind of like some of the ones that are shared in the comments as well. Imagine if that was to occur. This is without nothing. This is just based on how Canada has functioned in the last little while and how it's affected Alberta. So, and I was talking to someone on the phone, he suspected that Saskatchewan would be less, but I kind of pointed back. I don't know if it'd be less because Saskatchewan is greater affected by their failure to deal with the China tariffs. So no one still has talked about the China tariffs. And they came into effect yesterday or today. And no one's talking about it. Pierre hasn't mentioned a peep, neither has Carney. The only one, I think, MP Barlow with the Conservative Party has, and Scott Moe. And that's basically it. So while I talk to farmers, they get a very different sentiment. I think a lot of them are leaning towards separation. If Ottawa's going to keep making decisions, that's going to completely put the detriment of Saskatchewan at risk and Alberta. But I'm just talking right now personally about Saskatchewan. RCV says, I'm fed up trying to explain to Quebecers why pipelines are vital. RC says, hi, everyone. Maria says, some will never get it. RC's originally from Regina. This is why I get so frustrated with Quebecers' attitudes towards petroleum. Are you in Quebec now? Roger asked, could you become part of Montana? I don't know if that would be a good idea to join another state personally, because the culture is very different between Montana and Saskatchewan. If it was to become its own state, I like that idea more because states in the US have a lot of autonomy from the federal, the whatever you call it. Is it federal government in the US, or is that just a term used for Canada? But because of that, I wouldn't like the idea of another state controlling how we function here in Saskatchewan. I would prefer more autonomy in that sense. Yeah, Melinda says, yes, I need to see a breakdown of everything to make an informed decision. I'm not trying to scare people. I just think we need to know more. My husband is nearing retirement, and it is scary to think we would lose 65% of capital gains tax on our RSP savings. We could never build that back if we lost 65%. Sorry, I lost the line. I'm all out for separation if Carney gets in. I just think we need to be more informed on this before we do anything. I'm wondering if there's been like scenarios where something like this has occurred in the past and what was the what did that look like here? Let's see. Oops. Passed and joined. I remember Jonathan had asked Panama separated from Colombia with support from the United States. Texas declared independence from Mexico back in 1836. Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania was later annexed by Soviet Union. South Yemen and North Yemen in 1990. Crimea in 2014. And yeah, they did a referendum and it was annexed by Russia. This remains a disputed event with many countries not recognizing the annexation. There was other ones Jonathan had told me. Do you guys know of any? Maria says Quebec should be exploiting, did I say that right? Their own oil, create great jobs and wealth for the province. Zachary says, I'm sure that mainstream media demonizing Trump and US plays a significant factor. Do you think part of the issue is the cultural difference between Canada and the US? You know what's funny is when you ask people what makes Canada Canada, and they say we're not the US. That while there are some cultural differences, there are a lot more similarities than differences. If most people who travel to other countries will find themselves more similar to the US. But there are some cultural differences. Canada tends to have more socialism. Is that I'm having a brain fart. Socialist views, especially when it comes to healthcare and a lot of things, but that wasn't always the case. I think it's just gone more in that direction more and more versus Americans believe in individualism and but it's in their like whole values and dreams, right? You can become anything you want. The American dream. But we used to have that very similar in Canada. It's just it's hasn't been as apparent in the last few years. We used to value freedoms, but that also hasn't been very apparent in the last few years. Yeah, Maria says the ag industry is a huge target for net zero zealots globally. Yep. Basically, part of the reason Hawaii joined the US was precisely because they didn't want to deal with the tariffs. I didn't know that. As a person who has had serious, so RC says, as a person who's had serious operation as a kid, which essentially cost zero, I would be very careful about joining the States. The operation would have cost my family $150K in the 80s. But see, there's a huge misunderstanding to the healthcare system in the US. There's a lot of people posting information out there that's not even true. I was talking to Terry about this just last week because it's one of the things that my husband and I were thinking, well, what would we do if our kids have pre-existing conditions, or I have Hashimoto? Does that mean I wouldn't be approved for health because I'm at higher risk of other autoimmune diseases, things like that? But Terry says, no, there's so many different programs. And yes, some cost, like some insurance plans cost. Some are included with your work. Some are included. And we have similar things here in Canada too. Our prescriptions are not covered in Canada unless you have health benefits through your work. Like, for example, diabetic medication is not covered unless you have coverage through your work. Now, we have people who are low income qualify for free medication, but that also exists in the US. If you're low income, you don't pay for healthcare. It's all free. If you're over 65 years of age, you have free healthcare. Like there's a lot of, and certain states have very similar healthcare than we do. They also have the option of private though. And then I'm just looking at the other comments. And yeah, there are very many similarities. Hi, Jonathan. Thanks for joining us. I did go a bit earlier today. I do want to get some work done after the show. So I thought, oh, I'll start I was ready, so I might as well start at 12:30. Okay, let's see what else we've got here. There's quite a few videos. I'll make it bigger. Mark Carney was in Alberta. Let's see what the post says. So this video, Mark Carney blames Trump tariffs for Canada's economic downturn over the last 10 years. The Pleb posted this. Says the Trudeau government is not responsible for this mess we're in. Oh, the sad thing is so many Canadians are going to believe that to be the reality or the truth.
Sorry about the microphone.
Yeah, no problem. I'm a pretty tall guy. You have not been elected in a federal election yet, and you recently flew to Europe on government wide-body jet at the expense of at least $500,000. So the question I have for you today, and maybe I'll say this before I ask the question, these people around you all paid for that flight, and you've not been elected yet. So will you commit to refunding these taxpayers for that flight?
Well, it's an interesting question, way of framing it. Look, and I'm going to go back to, I'm going to allude to the question that was asked previously by Mr. Staples from the Journal, and the situation that we're in as a country, which is we are in an economic crisis that's brought on, sorry, I'm going to answer the question, brought on by the tariffs that have been put on Canada, actual and prospective. One of the challenges—
The economic crisis was brought on by former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, and you were his advisor.
I think you would find. I think you would
did not create that problem.
I certainly. Hey, nobody in Canada created that problem. Nobody in Canada created that problem. The U.S. government has decided to put tariffs on all of its closest allies. All of its closest allies. I wouldn't for a moment suggest that anyone in Canada is the cause of this. What our responsibility is to take action to react to a different world that we're in. And part of the way we do that is we build out new partnerships, new opportunities, including opportunities. And I'm going to give you a specific one, and then I don't know if you have one more follow-up, but I'll give you a specific example. It goes to my previous answer, something I also discussed with the Premier this morning, which is Canada has many advantages, and one of them is in critical metals and minerals. One of the issues is how are we going to develop the trade routes and the trade corridors?
I'm sorry, guys. I'm making you have to watch this.
Critical metals and minerals. And who are our clients for that? Who are customers?
Let's bleed it up.
Do we only have one customer to the south of us? The customer that's attacking us? That doesn't respect the trade agreements that they signed? Or should we develop new customers? New customers in Europe. What's required, if I may, what's required for those new customers is to build out trade corridors and infrastructure, including what I referenced in my previous answer and discussed with the Premier, is the potential to go north, go to new deep water ports. Churchill is an example, Gray's Point in Nunavut as another. And that creates a whole new set of opportunities for Albertans as a whole, for people across the country, for these hardworking people around me and those like them in the trades. And that's what my job
I'll
is.
take that as a no then.
No, you'll take that as a very comprehensive answer to your question.
Wow. What an arrogant. I won't say it because I don't want to say bad words on the show. Wow. How does that make you guys feel? Comments, had enough of this clown. You know what's funny? One of the things that make Canada so great with our natural resources, the things that we can produce, the things that makes us a potential for a superpower is our proximity to the US. And I'm so enraged that they are turning the US as an enemy because the US said, hey, let's depend less on other countries. Let's start building our own. Let's put some tariffs so that we can equalize it more, so it's more fair. But no, they want to make our greatest trading partner, just for the simple fact that of our proximity, they want to make them the biggest enemy. And it's the worst decision we could be doing for Canada economically. It's the absolutely worst decision we could do. But yeah, we don't have politicians with a clue. Oh. Ontarians eat up anything that comes out of his mouth. What do I read into his body language? Sorry. I was having a hard time. Let's see.
One of the issues is how are we going to
You know
develop
what? I don't read like Trudeau that he's lying or being deceitful per se. I think he honestly believes in what he's saying. That's what makes it worse. Like Carney has such extreme ideology, extreme beliefs that I honestly think he believes that. It's not like
the
Trudeau
trade
where
routes and the trade corridors rapidly in order to
he's
export
also not
those
answering
critical
really the
metals.
question. He's like skating around it.
Or should we develop new customers?
But one of the things he's really, really irritated by the questions being tough. He's not wanting to answer it. He's like boiling in anger, but is trying to be calm.
Discuss with the premier is the potential to go north.
You
go to
can
new
see it
deepwater
in
ports.
his
Churchill is an example.
expressions, in
Gray's,
the
Gray's
third
Point in Nunavut is
eyebrow,
another, and that creates a whole new set of opportunities.
in his condescending tone to this reporter. Like he breathes condescension. If you, even just with the how he approached, like he like throws it. Do you know what I mean? He throws his hand as in like, are you gonna grab onto that? Like just like I have a hard time like explaining it into words. Do you guys know what I'm talking about?
Opportunities for Albertans as a whole, for people across the country, for these hardworking people around me and those like them in the trades. And that's what my job
I'll
is.
take that as a no then.
No, you'll take that as a very comprehensive answer to your question.
It's so condescending. Zachary says that was honestly shocking. You hadn't seen it yet? Heather says, what a whack job. RC says, let him talk. He will sink himself. Yeah. Don't stop your enemy when they're damaging themselves. Is that what's the saying again? Don't stop your enemy when they're making a fool of themselves. Lori says, I didn't think there could be worse than Justine. Yeah, the problem, D says, the problem with just letting him talk is that corporate media will cover for him. He's very defensive. Yes, very. Imagine with him in a debate with Pierre Poilievre. That'll be interesting to watch. Tara Lee says, I love the US. I used to live close to the border when I was a child because we watched so much US news. I thought I was American. I identify as an American, she says. Okay, I'll get going on the material. There's so many comments, so many of you today. There's like 600 people watching. So I'll never get through this if I just cover just the comments. So this was a post by Danielle Smith. Wow, she's going scorch earth on Mark Carney. She says, at this request, I met with Prime Minister Mark Carney today. We had a very frank discussion in which I made it clear that Albertans will no longer tolerate the way we've been treated by the federal Liberals over the past 10 years. I provided a specific list of demands the next Prime Minister, regardless of who that is, must address within the first 6 months of their term to avoid an unprecedented national unity crisis. It's funny, she doesn't say Western alienation and separation, but she uses more positive terms. This includes guaranteeing Alberta's full access to oil and gas corridor to the north, east, and west, repealing Bill C-69, aka the No New Pipelines Act, lifting the tanker ban off the BC coast, eliminating the oil and gas emissions cap, which is a production cap, scrapping the so-called clean electricity regulations, ending the prohibition on single-use plastic, abandoning the net zero car mandate, returning oversight of the industrial carbon tax to the provinces, halting the federal censorship of energy companies. I also made it clear that Alberta, as owner of the resource, will not accept an export tax or restrictions of Alberta's oil and gas to the United States, and that our province is no longer agreeable to subsidizing other large provinces who are fully capable of funding themselves. So that's the transfer payments. Lastly, I made it clear that federal mismanagement of Jasper and Banff National Park resulted in last year's tragic wildfire in Jasper and is endangering Banff, and the situation must be rectified immediately. With the federal election about to be called, I encourage all Albertans to get involved in what is likely one of the most pivotal and important election in our nation's history, and to support the party and candidates that have consistently advocating for freeing Alberta from the federal overreach and the repeated economic attacks our province has faced from Ottawa over the past 10 years. Wow. Interesting. That is a scathing. Scathing. Where did you guys go? I don't see you anymore. There you go. You disappeared for a bit. That is a scathing post. But I did comment on this. She did not include anything about our attacks on our firearms, which it should have been included there. If you're going to talk about the plastic straws, you should have been talking about our gun rights. And she didn't. So I'm really disappointed in that. That's why I commented on it. Great list. However, protecting our firearm rights should be in there. And it wasn't. So, and then what was the response of Mark Carney? Let's see what I've got here. There's a bit more from Danielle Smith. I'm going to play a few videos from Danielle Smith as well.
Is keeping oil.
Some people
I like this like bold approach. I love it.
would argue that Mark Carney has an almost religious attachment to net zero, and that has a lot of people worried. One energy expert I spoke with today said that Mark Carney is going to come for Alberta in a similar manner as Trudeau and Guilbeault. How worried are you?
I think there's a real danger that the new prime minister is worse than the old prime minister. I haven't read his book, Values, but if one of his values is keeping oil and gas in the ground and he thinks Alberta can operate on wind and solar and battery power, he's got another thing coming. So I will be able to make our case very clearly, especially
The words, he's got another thing coming. What is that?
in the changing environment we find ourselves in, that our world needs more energy. They need more energy from a reliable democratic source and ally. And the world is very interested in what Alberta has to offer. And I would hope that they would work in partnership with us to be able to get that to market. So I haven't had that conversation with the new prime minister yet. I intend to, and I'll have to vet it at that time. But everything I've seen so far suggests to me that, ending the retail carbon tax just so consumers can't see it when they go and fill up their gas or when they look at their home heating bill, but then walloping our industry with potentially higher taxes, that's just not going to fly. So that's what I'm hearing from the Prime Minister, is that he's doing an action to get political popularity, but the effect on our industry here is no different than what we saw under Environment Minister Stephen Guilbeault and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. So can we work through that? I don't know yet, but I can tell you I'm not encouraged by what I've seen so far.
Those were such strong words. You go, Danielle Smith. She's got more here too. Another minute. Let's watch this video. Juno News been putting out a lot of video, so you're going to see me feature a lot because they're doing a really good job at covering all of this.
The Prime Minister seemed to indicate he wanted to find a way to fast track the construction of new corridors and new pipelines. And then he went and did a press conference where he said that he was not in favor of a hard cap, which is something that he said to me as well in the meeting. But then his Environment Minister said the exact opposite. And what I said to him was, I will judge you based on whether you say the same thing in Alberta as you do when you go to British Columbia and when you go to Quebec. And so that's what we're trying to get some clarity on, is what is the direction of this new administration? If it's really a new administration, then I put the 9 key pressure points that we need to see addressed. And unfortunately, we're still seeing that same kind of saying one thing here versus another thing from a minister. We just want answers. So I hope he'll give some clarity today.
Ooh. She's doing really good. I didn't check to see what Scott Moe's been saying. I wonder if he's been addressing, because I know he was in the US there for a little bit. This is another video by Danielle Smith. I don't know if it's a repeat video, but let's see. I have a few.
We're announcing that government will introduce amendments to the Critical Infrastructure Defence Act to protect essential infrastructure, which in turn protects Alberta's economy and its people. Some amendments are focused on the southern border. Earlier this year, we created a 2-kilometer deep zone in Alberta side of the Canada-US border and deployed the interdiction patrol team to secure it. Now we're moving that zone into the Critical Infrastructure Defence Act, so the definition of essential infrastructure is listed in one place. Alone, this would be just a bit of legislative housekeeping, but the amendments don't stop there. They all sites and facilities where emissions data and records are held as essential infrastructure. This amendment to the Critical Infrastructure Defence Act provides an extra tool to safeguard essential infrastructure from interference, and that includes interference from Ottawa. I would certainly hope that the new Prime Minister has taken the time to read our Constitution, and I would direct him to pay specific attention to Section 92A, which gives the province, not the federal government, the exclusive jurisdiction over non-renewable natural resource development. Alberta will continue in its pursuit of doubling our oil and gas production to meet the growing global demand for energy. And we will not let Ottawa stand in our way. We will not tolerate the continuous unconstitutional overreaches made by the federal Liberal government. Measures like the emissions cap, the net zero electricity regs, the net zero electric vehicle mandate, and the energy industry advertising ban must be stopped now. And make no mistake, Alberta will do whatever it takes to shield our economy from the Liberals' growth-killing lunacy. These amendments we're introducing today would include denying federal workers access to our facilities and the information they contain. I will continue to fiercely and unapologetically stand up for Albertans and defend the best interest of our province, our economy, and our industry.
Interesting. That was really good. She's really pushing back. So she's not just saying she's going to do it. She's putting legislation behind it, which I think is really good. Now, there was a response by Mark Carney, but do I have it here?
You recently...
Sorry about the microphone.
Yeah.
Hi.
No,
Oh, I've already played that video. It's just something else. I do have one by Pierre Poilievre. Let's see what he says. It's a couple minutes, I think. Yeah. Here you go.
Mark Carney was in Edmonton yesterday to meet with Danielle Smith. Shortly after the meeting, Smith put out a list of demands for the next Prime Minister, including, among other things, ending the prohibition on single-use plastics. She said if these demands were not met within 6 months of the new mandate, there would be a national unity crisis. Are you willing to commit right now to meeting the demands that that Premier Smith has enumerated?
I think Premier Smith's demands.
Sorry, I'm getting distracted by this king behind Poilievre. Watch his facial expression. He's like intently listening, like he's a bodyguard, right, about to go and defend Pierre Poilievre. I love it. Who is this man?
Are very reasonable. You'll have to see the rest of our platform roll out in due course, but she was making clear that Mark Carney's using weasel words. He's pretending that he suddenly, 30 days before an election, changed his entire radical net zero, keep it in the ground ideology. Mr. Carney, I can't even believe he would have the audacity to show up in Edmonton. He opposed the Northern Gateway pipeline in a committee testimony while his company was buying pipelines in the Middle East. That pipeline would have created jobs for Edmontonians. It would have been a boom for Northern Alberta. And all the money that would have rushed into Edmonton would have created opportunities. And he opposed it. It's on the record. He supports carbon taxes in Canada while he invests in American coal. Yesterday, his environment minister confirmed that the energy cap will stay in place if the Liberals are in office. So, despite the fact that they're trying to put on this mask last minute before the election, make no mistake, a fourth Liberal term will be exactly like the previous three. It has been the lost Liberal decade. And this is the question Canadians are going to have to answer. Do we want a fourth term of Liberals who block resources, tax our people, drive up our costs, unleash crime in our community, and make us weak and defenseless facing the Americans? Or do we want to put Canada first for a change by axing taxes, unleashing our resources, building homes, locking up criminals, rebuilding our military, standing up to the Americans, and putting Canada first?
Every Canadian needs to see that video. Every Canadian needs to see that. If you haven't shared this video, like, subscribe, share it. Every Canadian needs to see that. The 2-minute, 23-second video. Notice something else about that video. He didn't say every single second. He answered the question. He educated Canadians on what Canada would look like under a Carney government for the next 4 years. And he also told Canadians what he would do instead. Like, this is really great messaging. I think that Pierre Poilievre's team should clip that and post it. Really, really great post. I'm just going to bookmark it. I'm going to do a small clip too. Some people would argue that Mark. Okay, what else do I got here? Now, this is another post by Pierre. Only months ago, the Liberals voted unanimously against my idea of taking the GST off new homes. Now, a few days before calling an election, they plagiarize me again. Liberals will never do this policy. They are just trying to trick people into giving them a fourth term. Mark Carney had just announced, where is it? Let me find it. Where'd it go? Right here. My government is eliminating the GST on all homes up to $1 million for first-time home buyers. Pleb says, another idea you stole from Pierre. The sales tax on home. You will pay no GST on new homes of under $1 million, saving up to $50,000. This was posted by Pierre on October 28th, 2024. what else is there here? There's a video by Pierre that I didn't watch the whole thing, but there's another video of an interview he did that I really liked. Where did it go? I want to share that one. I did save it. Where did it go? Is it this one? No. Did I close it by mistake? I think I did. Here, I'll try to find it while we play this one. Canada first with shovel-ready zones, pre-approved areas to build mines, data centers, pipeline, LNG plants, and more. We have an opportunity to being one of the people leading the way when it comes to AI and new technology, but we're not taking advantage of it. But let's play this. It's a bit longer. I'm gonna make it go a bit faster.
Country in the world. We have the second biggest landmass in the world, the third biggest proven oil reserves, sixth biggest lithium reserves, the biggest uranium and potash reserves, 154 million acres of farmland, and 4 coasts that are either on or leading to tidewater. We have an abundance of energy for data centers and cold weather to cool them down. We have 41 million highly educated, brilliant people ready to get it done. So why aren't we the richest country in the world? The answer? Gatekeepers. We can't get out of our own way. It takes more than 17 years to get the average mine approved and built in Canada. We have the second slowest permits in the OECD. In the first 5 years of this Liberal government, $176 billion of resource and energy projects were canceled, mostly due to government obstacles and rules. These projects would have made us more self-reliant and less dependent on the United States. There's the Energy East pipeline that would have brought 1 million barrels of Western oil to New Brunswick every single day. The company canceled the project after spending $1 billion on getting it approved after the Liberal government suddenly changed the environmental rules. Another project, the Northern Gateway, would have brought Canadian oil from Alberta to the Pacific and on to Asia. Justin Trudeau vetoed that one, a decision Mark Carney endorsed in testimony at a parliamentary committee not long afterward.
Do you support the Prime Minister's decision to veto the Northern Gateway pipeline, Mr. Carney?
I understand the veto of the Northern Gateway pipeline.
You support it?
I think it's sensible. I wasn't involved in the decision, but I think it was the right decision.
Carney opposed pipelines in Canada while his company bought pipelines in the Middle East and Asia.
It's clear that this is not about the environment. If it were, you'd be consistent and you'd oppose fossil fuels everywhere. But you're happy to profit off of foreign fossil fuel companies while killing jobs among our own people.
Radical liberal keep it in the ground ideology opposes Canadian resources while supporting dirty foreign oil. Most of all, C-69, the liberal no new pipelines law, makes it effectively impossible to get any project approved. The consequence is that the U.S. gets 97% of our oil exports and 100% of our natural gas exports. Because we can't sell to anyone else, the Americans rip us off. They pay $63 a barrel for our oil, while the world price is $76. They pay $4 per million British thermal units, while the price in Europe is $15. Here's a simple equation for our liberal friends. When you sell something for $4 that is worth $15, you get really poor really fast. And because we do not have an east-west pipeline, the oil Quebec buys from Alberta must run through American pipelines, meaning they can cut us off from ourselves at any time. Enough. Let's build Canada again. It's time to put Canada first. It's time to bring home our jobs, energy, and economic sovereignty. And that is what my Bring It Home economic plan will do. And so today I'm introducing the Canada Shovel Ready Zones. Canada Shovel Ready Zones will be areas already permitted for construction. Here's how we'll get it done. First, we will identify a spot that makes sense for, say, a power station, LNG plant, pipeline, or other major project. Second, we'll make sure it is a safe place that won't harm people or the environment. Third, my government will work with other levels of government to lock down the zoning and permits in advance. Fourth, we'll offer pre-permitting before even getting an application, so that permits could be published online with a checklist that businesses would have to complete in order to protect nature and people. Then, businesses could buy the land, move in, hire people, and build, knowing they already have the permits. Let me be clear about this. It's not that the permits will simply be faster, it's that they'll be already done. So think of an area that we identify that is perfect for liquefying and exporting gas. We would publish a permit online with the normal safety and environmental requirements. And then companies could come in immediately, buy the rights for it, and begin building, hiring local First Nations and other Canadians to generate the paychecks in order to liquefy that gas, ship it off to Asia, in order to break Asian dependence on coal, or send it off to Europe to break European dependence on Russian gas, turning dollars for dictators into paychecks for our people. We'll unleash hundreds of billions of dollars of investment in power plants, nuclear energy, mines, pipelines, data centers, and much more. These places will be humming with the sounds of construction equipment, as you will see hardworking and talented Canadian workers going around doing the job and expecting big, beautiful, six-figure paychecks to fill their bank accounts. Welders, boilermakers, pipe fitters, miners, and factory workers will be able to spend those paychecks at local restaurants and other businesses, creating even more powerful paychecks. The economy will boom, raising funds for hospitals and schools. Most of all, we will be less reliant on the Americans. In fact, we will be self-reliant, sovereign, and stand on our own feet, to stand up to the Americans and stand up for ourselves, for a change. And we will restore Canada's promise that hard work gets you a great life in a beautiful home, on a safe street, protected by solid borders and brave troops under a proud flag. Canada, let's bring it home.
That messaging is much better than the anti-American messaging, like the way he finishes it. It's a really good plan. I'm wondering if the Liberals will steal it now. I was just looking at what Scott Moe had been posting in the last couple of days. But and I came across this post. First I'll play this video. Sorry, I'm doing too many things at once. While that was playing, I was kind of trying to find what Scott Moe had been doing, but let's play this video.
About the size.
It's another plan that he hasn't done a full video announcing it, but it's another plan he's talked about. It's not very long.
We're going to back the trades. It starts with bringing in tax fairness to allow traveling trades workers to write off the full cost of their food, transportation, and accommodation to go from one job site to another in order to get things built. Second, we will ensure that the lion's share of federal education and training dollars is directed not just to university education, but also to trades-based education. Absolutely. Our young people need to be encouraged to go into the trades, because the trades are where the big paychecks are going to come in the future. And finally, I'm going to be sending a big, beautiful present to every single high school principal. It will be a box about the size of this stage. And in that box will be modules for every single licensed Red Seal trade for pre-apprenticeship programs that they can voluntarily take on and provide to their kids in the school.
This is really good policy announcement. When I was in Washington, D.C., we had Mike Rowe. I'm trying to work on getting him to come on my show. He would be a really good guest to have on. And he talked about the lack of people willing to work in trades and go into trades, and how much there's a huge hole that needs to be filled. And we're going to start seeing really big, that affecting every industry, every area in the US, if we don't correct course and change that right away. He would be really great to come on the show and talk about that. If you haven't seen his speech, it was at CPAC in Washington, D.C. about a month ago. And just look, Mike Rowe, CPAC. It was the first time he went there. But yeah, while we were doing this, I was looking at what Scott Moe was up to, and this post came up. Brian Lilly says this move by Scott Moe and the Sass Party is dumb. They're banning American brands like Bud and Coors Lights that are made in Canada using Canadian inputs like Saskatchewan grown barley. I know people growing that barley who will be hit. Be smart, not stupid, in response to Trump. So Beer Canada seeks immediate reversal of Saskatchewan's Canadian-made beer boycott. So Beer Canada is calling on Premier Moe Saskatchewan government to immediately reverse its misguided decision to pull proudly Canadian brewed beer from the store shelves. This heavily handed market intervention directly harms Canadian businesses, farmers, workers, and consumers, while undermining the principle of fair trade, national economic, and cooperation with consumers. So they're directly affecting farmers. Not only that, by banning beer, American-made beer. A lot of Americans buy barley and stuff to make beer from Saskatchewan. So, and then produce it in the US and then sell it back to Canada. But another tweet, while I was kind of looking to see what he had posted, he posted this. A lot of people were saying in the comments, and this is what made me go look it up. A lot of people were saying they wish that Scott Moe had a backbone the way Danielle Smith does. And I agree with you. But it's kind of interesting. He posted the food professor after I had him just on my show just a couple of days ago. But he's been posting a lot of really good information. To enter trade war with China, all we need to do is rescind the decision made in October to tariff imported Chinese EV, which we don't even import yet. It could save many of our farmers and harvesters, but Ottawa isn't even talking about it. Why? Question mark. It's true. Why aren't they talking about this? This should be one of the biggest things that we're focusing on at the federal government level. It's not something that can be dealt with when border and trading and stuff, that's at a federal level. It's not something that can be dealt with at the provincial level to an extent. But why aren't they talking about it? Somebody, one of the comments that I saw online that made me think, and I want to share it with you guys. I don't know it word for word, but they said something. They were kind of hypothetically saying, what is China doing? And they suggested, what if China does this to create this big crisis? And then all of a sudden, Mark Carney negotiates with China. Let's say China wants the Liberals in. And that's what we've seen over time. They want Canada weak so that we order more from the US. If Canada was thriving, we wouldn't be ordering as much from the US. We would have more production here. We would be a stronger country, less dependent on any other country. But under the Liberals, it's the opposite of a strong country. So if China wants to keep interfering in our election, wants to keep infiltrating Canada the way they have based on what has been reported by Sam Cooper and many other people, let's say that's the case. Why would China do this? They strategically, this was last October when we first put tariffs on Chinese EV vehicles. But they didn't retaliate then. They waited strategically to announce this the same weekend Mark Carney was having the leadership election, when the Liberals were having the leadership election. What if this is to portray Mark Carney as this savior that fixes the Chinese tariff? That means I can then be the best one to negotiate with Trump since I fix this. That's what this comment that was on X that was suggesting. And I could see that as a very real possibility if you're putting yourself in China's shoes with the things that they've shown themselves to want to do or try to do over Canada for generations. You had the Huawei thing, that whole thing that brought tariffs on canola oil and seed. Someone also suggested that they've been stockpiling for 15 years, all the things that they were buying from us. So they're okay with waiting longer. That was another take as well. I don't know what is the reality or what's true. I'm just sharing with some of the takes that I've seen. But if it does in fact happen that Mark Carney fixes this situation, comes out as the hero and savior of Canada over this Chinese tariff, I wouldn't necessarily think it's because he's great. I think it's just China trying to influence our election, trying to interfere in our election some more. Now, announced yesterday was a plan by Scott Moe. I just saw it now. Today in the legislature, MLAs debated and unanimously passed our government tariff response plan. Thanks to all Saskatchewan Party and NDP MLAs for your united support in Saskatchewan's plan. So I'm just going to read it for you guys. I'm going to make it a bit bigger so I can, I don't know if I'll be able to read it. It's too small. I might have to move closer. Give me one sec. Why do they do that? Maybe if I make the screen really big. Yeah, there you go. Okay, let's do this. Let's do this better. Ah, come on. I'm struggling here. Where did it go? Okay. Ah, it's doing that again. Okay, can you guys see it? It's trying to like minimize it into a screen. That's what. Here, I'm gonna. There. I'll just read it out. I'll just do main screen and I'll read it out. Now that I have it big or somewhat bigger. I need it even bigger. Okay. The government of Saskatchewan's terrorist response plan is aligned with all other provinces in the need to take counteraction against sorry. Unjustified tariffs, including stopping the purchase of U.S. alcohol and reviewing all government procurement to prioritize Canadian suppliers with the goal of reducing and eliminating U.S. procurement. I need to move it up some more. Support efforts to increase procurement from Saskatchewan-based employers, like recent announcement by Saskatchewan Crowns to increase procurement of steel from Evraz in Regina. Why weren't we doing this already? Isn't it in the rules to always try to get from Canada and from local and Saskatchewan before you buy anywhere else? Why would there have been projects from the US if we have the supply here in Canada? Anyways, support the federal government in the use of targeted counter tariffs and does not support the use of export tariffs. So they're supporting counter tariffs. That only affects us. We'll continue the work alongside all other premiers, federal ministers, and Canadian business leaders to engage with the U.S. government at all levels to emphasize the harm tariffs will cause to U.S. businesses, workers, and consumers. Continue to support expanding vital infrastructure projects, including ports, pipelines, and rails, including their construction and seamless operations. And will work to provide swift approval of any projects that pass through Saskatchewan. Continue to reduce Saskatchewan reliance on exports to the United States by increasing Saskatchewan exports to other countries through international trade missions and trade offices. I think there's one more. Let's just support the complete removal of the carbon tax on everything for everyone, including removal of industrial carbon tax that negatively impacts Saskatchewan businesses and jobs and drives the cost of Canadian made products up. Is that what that is? Or did they just not finish their flyer? Whoever made that flyer, that's not a great flyer. Is there a second page? Let's see. I'm just going to look at the post. Nope. Anyways, that's one of the things that Scott Moe posted. Oh, now I'm going to go back to I got to open up the screens again. Speaking of foreign interference, this is an interesting tweet by HOC staffer. I'm going to play the video actually, but I'll read out the tweet. Hope everything is working fine. Brian says, America is not our problem now that Trump is in. PP needs to work with the U.S. Anyone who leads our country needs to work with the U.S. Like they can talk about climate change all they want. If we don't export to the U.S., that means we're going to have to send everything we make across the ocean on big boats that use a lot of carbon. Like even the fact that we're pushing for this instead of fixing our relationship with the US is just unreal at this point. Maria says JT was pretending he was attacking China. It does nothing to hurt them at all. He knew that. No. Okay, let's watch this video here. I gotta make it bigger.
You know, a conservative until I got involved, because I don't care who wins up there. I frankly probably would do better with a liberal than the conservative, if you want to know the truth. But just a little while ago, before I got involved and totally changed the election, which I don't care about, probably it's to our advantage, actually. You know, a conservative until I got involved.
So they're trying to say that Donald Trump is interfering in our election because of what he said there. Just a simple fact that he's done tariff, it doesn't mean he was doing it to try to influence our election, but maybe it was, but it doesn't mean that was the case. But what he's noticed is the TDS in Canada has completely changed the direction that the Canadian people have gone with the election. I think that's what he was referring to. But anyways, this post says Trump fully admits to interfering in our election to help the Liberals because it's to his advantage. A vote for the Liberals is a vote against Canada. So this was the take of HOC staffer. It's interesting. I mean, you can see Pierre using this for campaigning. I think that would be a bad move as well if Pierre kind of jumps on this some more, but it wouldn't shock me if he was to do it, if he just keeps doing the same thing he's been doing. But now Doug Ford, you guys all know how I feel about Doug Ford. He had a post. For years, Ontario has been... Okay, wait a minute. We're going to spill some tea here. I'm going to cover what Doug Ford has posted, and then I just realized I don't have the other tweet. So once I'm done, I'll find it. But we're going to cover Doug Ford, and then somebody quote tweeted that post, and I want to find it. It's going to take me maybe 30 seconds, but I'll read this first. Doug Ford quote tweets that video I shared earlier about build Canada first, starting with the Ring of Fire. It's a little bit shorter video, but it's very similar to the 6-minute one I shared earlier. Anyways, Doug Ford says, for years, Ontario has been calling on federal government to cut red tape, streamline approval and unnecessary duplication, and match the $1 billion we've dedicated to building the roads to the Ring of Fire. It's great to see Conservative Party of Canada answer our call. This needs to be a Canadian consensus. As we share down the threat of President Trump's tariff, I expect every federal party to join Ontario in unlocking the enormous economic potential of the Ring of Fire. We need a clear answer on where the Liberals stand. Maybe I'll play this video quickly just so people understand. I might not play the whole thing, but let's play some of it.
Company discovered in 2007, a Canadian company discovered a gold mine. Yes, a literal gold mine. Almost 500 kilometers north of Thunder Bay, this company's scientists discovered one of the largest untapped areas for rare earth metals in the world. Buried under their feet was tens of billions of dollars of critical minerals like chromite, cobalt, nickel, copper, platinum, and gold, resources the entire world is desperate for. It's called the Ring of Fire, and it could make Canada very rich. It would be life-changing for Northern Ontario towns, galvanized by thousands of paychecks and modern infrastructure. It would also help our First Nations become richer. It would boost our economy with billions of dollars, allowing us to become less dependent on the Americans after we start selling these resources to our friends and allies overseas. And it would turn dollars for dictators into paychecks for our people, no longer having to rely on Beijing for the metals that create our batteries, turbines, solar panels, and satellites. But you might be asking yourself a question at this point. We've known about the Ring of Fire for years. So why hasn't a single mine opened? Why hasn't a single road been built or a single worker handed a paycheck? The answer? The Liberals did everything in their power to keep these minerals in the ground. They've been sitting on Ring of Fire permits for 5 whole years. The process was started by former Liberal Environment Minister Wilkinson. In February of 2020, after he did nothing for 3 years, Trudeau decided he needed a new minister. The man for the job, radical environmentalist Stephen Guilbeault, who made it even harder for us to get these resources out of the ground, and he's still in Mark Carney's cabinet. And then finally, 2 years after that, the Liberal government completed their work by creating yet another 2.5-year process that will only lead to another report on the pros and cons of mining activity in this area. That report, which will cost government and private industry alike, won't even say whether mining can take place. This in spite of the fact that the government of Ontario has already conducted similar studies on the exact same project. So now, after a decade of Liberal keep-it-in-the-ground ideology, the Ring of Fire is on the brink of collapse. Not to mention that the Liberal Bill C-69 makes projects like these very difficult, if not impossible, to get approved at all. Enough. This gatekeeping and red tape was devastating to Canada before Donald Trump threatened tariffs on our economy. Now it is an act of economic suicide. That's why I am announcing today that my government will set a goal to greenlight all federal permits for the Ring of Fire in Northern Ontario within 6 months to harvest chromite, cobalt, nickel, copper, and platinum. We will also make a commitment of $1 billion over 3 years to the construction of a long overdue road connecting First Nations communities and the critical mineral deposits in the Ring of Fire to the Ontario Highway Network. We will let companies investing in the Ring of Fire pay a share of their federal corporate taxes to local First Nations. And as NATO has identified these critical minerals as essential towards our collective defense, some of our government's investments in this road.
I won't play the whole thing, but I like that he's planning on building the roads as well to the First Nation community. I used to live in northern Saskatchewan in Laloche. And if you've ever been to Laloche, the road between, well, basically between Meadow Lake and up there, but it was even worse from Beauval to Laloche. It was a really, really rough road to drive on because there was no resources kind of put into that. But anyways, so that's what Doug Ford posted. Let's go back to that. Now, there was the tea that I wanted to talk about. I don't think I saved it. Do you guys know the name of the MPP that Doug Ford, she's Iranian, and Doug Ford, what's her name? Former MPP. Let's see if okay, former MPP Ontario. She was kicked out of Doug Ford's party because she was speaking out against, what was it again? Oh, Goldie Gamari. Okay, let's find her. I want to find the tweet and then I'll share it with you guys. She was kicked out because she met with Robinson. Do you guys remember? Where'd everyone go? There's like almost no comments. Did it shut down? Are you guys still there? Goldie Gamari. Here it is. It was a post about Pierre. I'm just trying to find it. You're still there. Okay. Sorry. There was like no comments. I thought everyone was like, I thought it had shut down or something because you guys were commenting so much. And then there's a bunch of you. Okay, okay, I gotta find Pierre. Let's see. I'm just gonna search it, her profile. But anyway, she had scathing things to say about Doug Ford. Okay, here it is. I'm gonna read it to you guys. Canadian Insider political story time. Buckle up. I first met Pierre Poilievre in 2015 when I decided to seek the provincial Ontario PC nomination for Carleton. He was still a minister at the time. I'll never forget our first meeting. I'm not going to give details because our conversation was confidential and I respect Pierre more than any other politician. But right then and there, in that meeting 10 years ago, I realized that he is such a humble and genuine person. Pierre made me a cappuccino with the cafe's cappuccino machine because he didn't want to bother the cafe owner who was dealing with other customers in line. So here I am, 10 years ago, a political nobody at the time, wanting to meet Pierre so I can let him know that I want to run provincially in his federal riding of Carleton. He makes me a cappuccino, and for the next 2 hours, we spoke politics. He gave me a lifetime's worth of political advice. Fast forward to today, Doug Ford is lying about not knowing Pierre. This is the tea. Let me have a drink really quick. Of course, I I know he's lying because I was involved in conversation with Doug Ford about Pierre. When Pierre was running for the leadership of the Federal Conservative Party, I was told by Ford that I can't vote for him and I can't go to the leadership race results in Ottawa. Paul Calandra told me in caucus in front of all my colleagues and Doug Ford that I couldn't even publicly congratulate Pierre on social media, and if I did, I'd be kicked out of caucus. I congratulated Pierre in private, but I wish I'd congratulated him in public and not cared about what Doug Ford thought of Pierre. Wow. It's getting juicy. Had you guys seen this? So she's still upset, I think, from being kicked out of caucus. But yeah, I think it was Tommy Robinson. Tommy Robinson. That's who she had lunch with when he was in Canada, and that's why she got kicked out. Now, there's another thing that I saw. Anyways, it's interesting. Let's see if there's going to be more details coming out. But did you guys know about the feud between Doug Ford and Pierre Poilievre? That makes me like Pierre more because I really don't like Doug Ford. But now this is another post. The Carney Liberals say they will pass a law extended birthright citizenship to children of immigrants born outside of Canada. So if they're Canadian and they're born outside of Canada. Well, I thought that was already. But it's not just citizenship where you apply. It's birthright citizenship. Anyways, Canada Proud posted that. I just realized we've been going quite a bit and I still have a little bit to cover. So I'm going to skip a few things that I didn't mention in the explanation. I'll cover them tomorrow. Not tomorrow. We're not doing a show tomorrow. I'll cover them on the weekend. But I had so much to cover. I'll save it for tomorrow. I'm going to talk about Tesla. And then I'll end it with that. Robbie Starbuck. If you haven't been following Robbie, he does a lot of expose on DEI and ESG and stuff, that mostly DEI policies in government corporations, and he exposes them. They usually end up taking it out. So a lot of the big corporations in the US that have removed their DEI policies and stuff are thanks to the work that Robbie Starbuck's been doing. So I'm a huge fan of him. But anyways, he posted, if you don't follow him, I highly recommend you do. He posted, over the next few days, you're going to see an organized professional protest effort at Tesla stores put together by a group called Indivisible. George Soros Foundation has given Indivisible nearly $8 million for their activism. They're calling these Tesla takedown events, and they're doing it in the midst of a domestic terror spree targeting Tesla and Tesla owners. They have these planned across the entire country. These images are just 6 of the examples. How can this not be seen as encouraging more violence and terrorism? I personally think that any violence occurring near locations they've chosen should result in Soros, his foundation, Indivisible, and their founders being held criminally accountable as co-conspirators. The Indivisible founders are Ezra Levin and his wife Leah Greenberg. They became resistance figures during the Trump first term, and their work is celebrated by elected Democrats. So yeah, it's clear to me that the Democrats and their typical thugs are organizing this insanity. There's reportedly even a form of protest leaders can fill out to receive reimbursement payment for their protest. So these are some of the flyers. Now, there's been a lot of fires set, a lot of damage. I had other videos too, but I'm going to share this video. It's a short one. I'm going to make it go a bit faster. That just explains the things that I think is mostly, it's similar to TDS. It's the same kind of people doing the same kind of thing. But let's play it.
I'm saying on my phone, I know some of you know this on the iPhone, they've got that little stock app. I added Tesla to it to give me a little boost during the day. 225 and dropping. So
this man is a loser, literally and figuratively. He's too ignorant and stupid to understand that this is going to age like milk. Let me just break a few things down. Tesla is quite literally one of the most innovative companies on the planet right now. And they're an American company, and he's preying on their downfall. Let's think of the things Tesla offers now, and let's see what they're going to be offering in the future. The Model S, the Model 3, the Model X, the Model Y, the Cybertruck. All of these can be equipped with full self-driving FSD, meaning the cars drive themselves, literally. And they get better each and every day. The more data it takes in, the better FSD becomes. Not to mention they have semi-trucks. They have solar panels and solar roofs that they offer. They offer a power wall, which is like a home battery system that stores solar energy. They also have megapacks, which are like large-scale energy storage solutions. It's for like utilities and businesses to kind of like stabilize the grid and obviously store renewable energy. They have the supercharger network, which allows anybody to drive a Tesla from like California to New York, for example. Think of the supercharger network kind of like gas stations minus being able to go in and buy a drink and things like that. Not to mention Tesla has insurance. Everything I just mentioned, they already have. Now let's look at what they're going to be doing. They're going to be dropping an affordable next generation vehicle. Already unveiled a cybercab, a robo-taxi, an automated taxi that drives itself. Not to mention the Tesla network, which allows people that have FSD on their vehicles to use them in ride sharing, kind of like a robo-taxi. And then Optimus, a humanoid robot, which will drastically change the world we live in. This is undoubtedly one of the most innovative companies in the history of the world. And Tim Walz is preying on its downfall, like many Democrats. Tim Walz also doesn't mention the rest of the market is down as well. But let him keep talking his shit. It shows us how pathetic he is, and it will give us something to come back to here in 18 to 24 months. We'll see if he's still looking at his app then, when the price is significantly higher than it currently is. Not to mention Tesla employs around 80,000 Americans. I can make this video so much longer, but I'm not going to. To make it simple, the man is pathetic. His comment is going to age like milk. Now is a great buying opportunity for Tesla, and we will be bringing his comments back out 18 to 24 months from now. It's going to be satisfying to watch Tesla continue to win, knowing they want it to fail.
I'm saying on my phone,
Someone said insurers are going to jack Tesla auto insurance. I think Elon Musk, with how innovative he is, I think he's just going to provide insurance for Tesla owners. I think that's the direction it's going to go. Yeah, so, Maria said, or deny them insurance as too high of a risk. I think if that happens, I think the White House would step in as well. There's two more things I was going to talk about. Oh, three. I'll go fast. This was a post by Matt Walsh. And it got me thinking, because I always say America was built by immigrants, Canada was built by immigrants. Anyways, his take is different, and I think I agree with him. He says, America is not a nation built by immigrants. America was built by settlers. There's a difference. Settlers venture out into the wilderness to build a civilization from scratch. The modern immigrant comes to a place that is already built. Settlers planted the trees. The modern immigrant comes to eat the fruit. If you cannot see the difference, I don't know how else to explain it. And I would say this is very similar to Canada. And are there still people who are coming in here and building something from scratch? Yes. And I think that should be promoted and supported. And I fully support that. But it's just an interesting take that made me think. A lot of people who came to the US or came to Canada poured their blood, sweat, and tears into building the country into what it is. Same thing with Saskatchewan. A lot of this farmland wasn't being farmed. A lot of this farmland wasn't producing anything. Generations of families have worked nonstop, sacrificed nonstop to build it into what it is. And to just to not recognize that, I think, is a grave error. But yeah, they're not built by immigrants, built by settlers. Anyways, it was an interesting take that I hadn't even thought about before, because I always would say that. I always say immigrants built this country. And but I just thought it was something interesting that Matt Walsh pointed out. But and I think it says a lot to the history of Canada. When you think about, like, a lot of the farmers that came to Canada, like, came on a train, they didn't even know where they were going to live, and they built houses out of straw. Like, they tilled the land by hand. Like, it's not like they just came here and everything was handed to them and they didn't have to work for it, which we're seeing that a lot with a lot of the immigration that's happening, where the government is giving them everything for free and they're getting a ton of money. And I think we need to recognize that that's not a good way to grow our population. I'm of the mindset, and I learned this very early on when I was in leadership position in the past. If somebody was to, like, join my team or start working for me or working in my organization at the time, if I told them how to do everything, gave them everything, checked up on them daily, are you doing this, the second I stopped doing that, they would quit. They would stop working. They would fail. And I realized, in order for somebody to be successful, to succeed on their own, you need to empower them to do it for themselves and not provide them with everything. Because the second that the handouts stop, they don't know what to do. And I would see dealing with immigration in the very similar way. I'm not saying leave them out to starve or leave them out to not fend for themselves. There is something about educating them and showing them how our culture function, how to integrate within our culture, Canadian culture. And that can only be done by people who know the culture to be able to integrate them. But to provide everything for free, I think, is a grave mistake that we're making, not just for ourselves, for our country, but also for those who immigrate in. I think we should be providing them with opportunity, but also empowering themselves to take care of themselves more and to be successful on their own, not just handing out everything. There's another story that you probably won't hear on mainstream media that I wanted to share, but I'll just play the video.
The two astronauts that you just helped save from space, they didn't get any overtime pay for all that extra time. They got $5 a day per diem. For 286 days, that is $1,430 in extra pay. Is there anything the administration can do to get them, to make them whole?
Well, nobody's ever mentioned this to me. If I have to, I'll pay it out of my own pocket, okay? I'll get it for you.
The two astronauts that you just helped.
He even offered to pay it out of his own pocket. But that's the Trump you won't see, right? Because it doesn't demonize him, so they're not going to share it. Also, I'm going to end it now with what I'm going to cover, but I will share some information with you guys. I talked about the organization that I founded and am the president of. Tomorrow, we're going to be having our board, the whole board is coming over to my house, and we're going to be discussing what direction, what plan do we have over the next year for the organization? What are things we want to focus on? Is it informed consent? Is it school choice? Is it civil liberties? Is it democratic participation, democratic education? So we're going to be coming up with a game plan. But if you guys had an organization, a conservative leaning organization with conservative values, not necessarily conservative party, but just conservative values, if we were to start doing some work, what are some of the things that you as the viewers or listener would like to see in an organization happen in Canada or in Saskatchewan? Because we're going to bring some ideas to the table and kind of brainstorm. That's why we're doing it in person. Most of our meetings usually are over Zoom, but this time we're going to be in person because we want to really have a game plan for the organization going forward. So we're not just like running like chickens with our heads cut off, which not necessarily we were doing that. We were just not running, but other than me doing this show and trying to educate people, what are certain things that an organization could be focusing on to better the community and advance like conservative type values into society. So if you guys have ideas, I would love to yeah, David just put one, safe supply. So or the opposite of safe supply, recovery, more recovery options. But Maria says Trump loves his country. Wouldn't that be nice to have that as a leader? You know what? I don't necessarily think Carney's alliance or allegiance is to this country. I think it's more to the entities that feed his pocket, like the World Economic Forum, all the globalist elites. But I think he honestly thinks he's doing what's best for Canada based on his ideology. That's the dangerous part. He thinks he's doing what's best for everyone. Topics in voting, electronic voting, improving things for veterans, stop the Islamic infestation of Canada are some of the things that DGD3 suggested. No, Brenda, a micromanaging leadership is not productive in the bigger picture. No, it's not. And I learned that like really early on, because as soon as I would stop like helping and doing everything with them, then they'd be like, "Oh, why aren't you helping me? And I don't want to do this anymore." I'd rather empower people to figure it out themselves. LV says, if Carney is elected, we will become part of the EU. No good. PP looks at Canadians as an asset. Mark sees us as a liability. Yeah, it'll be interesting. One of the things too, the whole Israel, like this is one of the things as a board, when it first came out, what happened October 7th, like I'm very sure of my conviction on that, not just because I think it's a common sense approach, but I'm sure also because I'm believe in the Bible to be the true word of God. And I believe following the Bible is the best way we can go forward as a society. And that we need to evaluate everything with the truth that is in the Bible. That's my personal conviction, personal faith, and values are based on that. But I remember when October 7th happened and I was just seeing so much hatred towards Jewish people community in the streets. I'm like, we need to do something about it. And some of the people say, well, it's not part of our purview. It's not part of what we do. And it's part of why this show was started, because I'm like, well, if UG's not going to do it, I feel personal conviction over this. I'm going to do a show and talk about it on my show. And it'll be a Christ-centered show. So anyways, it was one of those things. Now we need to kind of sit down as a board and decide, okay, what are we going to focus on? Because we have a website and it's very vague, and it's vague for a reason. We were under a lot of scrutiny and attack, and like in the last 4 years, and because of the work that we were doing, trying to encourage and increase democratic involvement into our democratic processes throughout the province, we made it vague so that the attacks wouldn't really have anything that they can twist and turn to try to damage candidates and stuff. So, but now we're realizing people who go to our website don't necessarily know what we stand for. It's so vague. Like we do a bit, but not enough. So we're going to revamp everything and make sure people who come know exactly what we're fighting for, who we are as an organization, what our values are, what are our convictions, and what they can see for the plan going future as an organization. Are we going to do a bit more like Turning Point USA? Or are we going to be like Moms for Liberty? Like, what is it we're going to do? And so, yeah, we're coming as a board to kind of figure that out tomorrow. And so, yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. So if there's things you want us to focus on or talk about, or even just prioritize as an organization. I'll bring your words to the board tomorrow. But yeah. DGD says arms dealer don't care about religion, race, politics, language, nor culture. Arms dealer care about getting money. Every dead baby is just loose change in an arms dealer's pocket. When I grew up in the 70s, David's saying, school day started with an O Canada and the Lord's Prayer, and end of day, God save the Queen. Yeah, that actually was removed from the school based on lawyers from Saskatchewan that got rid of that. And we've only been going downhill since. Okay, I'm going to let you guys go. Have a nice weekend. And I will see you guys on Monday. I don't have guests scheduled for next week other than Cameron. I just can't remember which day we had to reschedule because of a pet. He had a pet emergency. He was at the vet. But yeah, I will be back next week. I'm going to try to work on getting more guests. There's a few that I really want to get on. So I just need to reach out to them and work my magic. That's what I call it. I'm surprised so many have said yes so far, but I will be back Monday. Might be just a regular show, but we'll see. See you guys. Happy weekend.